hrheadquarters.ie, the podcast.
Welcome to HR HQ, the interview series. I'm Andrea Hayes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Paddy Barr from Barr Performance Coaching. Paddy works with leaders and executive teams to strengthen performance, build capability, and create the conditions where people and ideas can thrive. In this episode, we're exploring the leader's role in building a culture of innovation. Paddy, you're very welcome. We're going to dive straight in.
Brilliant, Andrea. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you first, how do you define a true culture of innovation, and how can leaders measure whether it actually is working?
Well, Andrea, there's a lovely story about Michael Faraday. Michael Faraday was the gentleman who invented electricity, and he was presenting his invention back in the day of electricity to a group of scientists, a group of peers in the Royal College of Science in London. So he demonstrates electricity, and a guy in the audience puts his hand up and says, "I see what you've done, but what use is it?" And Michael Faraday replied and said, "I don't know, but what use is a baby?" And why that story has relevance to your question is there are two really, really important aspects of innovation, and any organization that's building a culture of innovation is, first of all, we have to create the space to allow the idea to emerge. We have to create time and space for people to be innovative. It's not a thing you switch on and off by accident. What we have to do is we have to create an environment whereby people can be innovative. And then what we have to do is, when we take the ideas that have come from the sessions, we have to nurture the idea. Very, very few ideas or innovative concepts are produced fully baked, for want of a better expression. What happens is that they're produced, frankly, as seeds, and we've got to nurture those seeds and help those seeds to grow into something that is going to be impactful. So companies that have built a culture of innovation, what do? Well, first of all, they prioritize and they reward innovation. So they recognize people who are being innovative. And they create time and space. So they set meetings for people to brainstorm. You'll hear of some companies having hackathons. You'll hear of other companies creating competitions. And these are fun competitions that enable people to bring forward ideas and discuss ideas and look at what can be done with those ideas in terms of generating value. What they also do is that we don't innovate for the sake of innovation. It's not a sort of a random, haphazard activity. What we've got to do is we've got to paint a picture for people about the purpose of the innovation. So what we do is we'll share with the community a set, perhaps, of categories of whereby we're looking for innovation. And that might become with, here's a customer problem. Here's a thing that our customers are telling us are a challenge. What do you folks think you can do differently that would enable to solve that problem? Here is the source of our competitive advantage. What do you think we should do to secure our competitive advantage into the future? What ideas do you have around improving effectiveness and efficiency? What ideas do you have around improving our compliance or reducing risk? And then perhaps a whole area you might sort of say to people, look, here's something that's really important to us is employee well-being. Anybody have any ideas or thoughts that we could put in place that would have an impact in those areas? So the companies that have a culture, they'll have a process in place. They'll have people who are championing it. And when I say people, I very specifically mean leaders who are championing innovation and deliberately prioritizing innovation in the organization and rewarding and recognizing the people who are being innovative. And finally, what they will do is they will create a space for failure. So when we are innovating, by very definition, we are going out into the unknown. So we don't know. It could be a magnificently brilliant idea, which is going to unlock tremendous value, or it could be something that, hey, actually, that one didn't work for us. And that's okay. So what we've got to do in order to find those nuggets of brilliance, we are going to have to try and fail at a couple of other things. So what the company will do is they'll create a little metaphorical laboratory to enable people to pilot an idea and to nurture that idea. And hey, if it comes to fruition, great. If it doesn't, well, at least we've learned, hey, it didn't work. And what can we do with that learning? So that's how I would sum up how one would create that culture of innovation within an organization.
And Paddy, I think HR leaders will really appreciate those practical indicators that you outlined. But I'm wondering if they are trying to distinguish if their organization is simply talking the talk but not walking the walk. Have you any kind of indicators of those subtle everyday leadership behaviors that or unintentionally kind of suppresses innovation? So we say that we're innovative, we say that we're doing all of this, but we're not really being supportive. How can HR leaders kind of know, is this working?
Well, there are two things. First of all, innovation is not about the activity of innovation. It's all about outcomes. So after a while of us innovating, we should be able to point to material outcomes that have been delivered as a result of the process of innovation. So if we're not able to point to outcomes, well, then that's not a good thing. But in your question, Andrea, you said, well, what do we do maybe that sabotages it? Because it's very easy, as you say, to talk a good game about innovation and then sabotage ourselves. And I think we've got to look at a couple of things. First of all, lack of recognition. If we're not recognizing people who are submitting ideas and people who are nurturing ideas and people who are pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, then they won't do it. It's as simple as that. So we've got to provide recognition. We've got to reward risk taking. So, again, if we are being genuinely innovative and creative in some way, shape or form, we're taking a risk. And what we've got to do is we've got to reward that. And that means when the risk fails, that we also recognize that as a learning opportunity rather than perhaps ridiculing the individual or the team for making the mistake. And in this regard, we've got to be very, very careful of off-the-cuff comments, because very frequently the manager or leader in the meeting room might well say, okay, well, look, we're going to go and we're going to try this idea. And I really 100% support us, piloting this idea. And perhaps they do, but then 5 minutes later in the coffee dock, casually and off the cuff, they might say, I don't think that's going to work. And, that might be their true, honest belief. But by sabotaging the thing before it even starts, then they're right. It will become a self-fulfilling prophecy and it won't work. So what we do is if we don't prioritize time for innovation, if we don't invest in ideas, if we don't nurture the ideas, and if we're not taking the learning from how we nurture ideas, then what will happen is it'll be seen as a flavor of the month activity, and nobody will be motivated to participate in an innovative activity in the.
It's so interesting because to create that culture, you mentioned kind of the foundation for experimentation, risk taking, sharing ideas. That requires a lot of psychological safety. And we hear about that now a lot in attachment styles and psychotherapy. But as a HR leader, how can they really ensure that their staff feel psychologically safe through those things that you mentioned there, not off the cuff comments, but real kind of proper feedback systems or leadership development? Have you any kind of specific practices that you've seen work?
Well, psychological safety is really critical in high-performing teams. We know that teams or groups that do not have psychological safety will not reach their potential in the context of high performance. And I've never met a leader who is not verbally supportive of psychological safety. However, I've been in loads of teams and groups where people would say, this psychological safety doesn't exist. So how does that come about? Well, it comes about because the leader doesn't embody psychological safety. And what I mean by that is we know from the research that people mirror the behavior of the leader. either subconsciously or consciously, they mirror the behavior of the leader. And in an environment of psychological safety, I have to feel comfortable bringing forward and talking about things that have gone well or things that have gone poorly for me. However, if the leader never expresses a vulnerability, or if the leader never shares their anxieties or their fear, and if the leader never talks about mistakes that they have made, then the people on the team will never share anxieties or fear or whatever, because they'll see that the leader is presenting himself or herself as being bulletproof. So they go, well, in order for me to excel in this organization, I have to present myself as bulletproof. And as a result of that, we don't have psychological safety. So what we have to do in psychological safety is the leader must lead by example, and he or she must be comfortable talking about their hopes and their fears, talking about their vulnerabilities, talking about what worries them, talking about what's keeping them up at night. And when they start doing that, then what you will see is the team will see, okay, this is behavior that is being, how shall I say, led by the leader and displayed by the leader. So therefore they will then display those behaviors themselves. And we'll get that psychological safety. So I would always say, if I'm talking to HR people and they're working with leadership teams and stuff, is that it's never about having a competency. What's important is how you display the competency. So in the context of psychological safety, it's not about saying, oh yeah, I as a leader, I think we should all have psychological safety. I think this is really important. No. That's the words. It's the actions that really demonstrate. So what the leader has to do is to open up and frankly be comfortable being vulnerable with their team.
And I think even just hearing what you're saying there, Paddy, I'm hearing that the leader has to ensure that innovation isn't confined to a single person or a single team. It's almost a shared responsibility across the entire organization. How can a leader who's worried about operational efficiency and then thinking all of this innovation, it's a bit time wasting sometimes, there is a balance, isn't there, to getting it right?
Well, absolutely. And everybody will say, look, I have a day job here. I've got loads of things on my plate. So how do I get this thing right? Well, I think there's a couple of things I would suggest is, first of all, we do create, again, metaphorically, laboratory environments for innovation. And perhaps what we do is we say to the folks, well, why not focus your innovative ideas on stuff that's going to make your day job easier, so they can see there's something in it for them. They're going like, oh yeah, well, if we get this idea right, gosh, this is going to give me time and space to enable me have a bigger impact in my day job. So what we can do is we can very much separate the two. So there is the getting of the day job done, but what we can do is when we're providing focus for the innovation, we can say to the folks, look, here's some time and space to be innovative. Now, part of the focus of that is let's focus on stuff that would be of benefit to you or your team in your day job. So therefore, people can see the relationship between being innovative and having a personal impact for them. So I would think, first of all, it is important that people can see that connection. The second thing is if people understand that there's a real purpose to the innovation. So yeah, look, if I'm innovative here, this is going to have a material impact for the customer. It's going to have a material impact for our clients. It's going to have a material impact for our competitive advantage. Then what they'll do is they'll enjoy it as being perhaps something that's different from their day job. So they don't see themselves as being confined to their day job. They see themselves as being, oh, I have my day job, but I also have opportunities to be creative and innovative and whatever. So I would see it as being exciting, different, do something different addition to the job rather than something that conflicts with the day job. But we do have to separate the two. There's no two ways about it.
And you mentioned there the excitement and that enthusiasm phase. So what systems or even a ritual or practice have you seen work to help those ideas survive beyond, that enthusiasm phase? So it's something that's repeatable in the company rather than just an accidental thing that happened. Is there something, because everybody in listening to you, they'll say, we want that. That sounds great for our company, but we have to have a practice that makes it continual. So it's something that's persistent and consistent.
And you're so correct in that really when we do anything, we have to do things that will sustain and create a new habit in how we do it. So lots of companies will have either quarterly awards. So there's every quarter they'll say, okay, who came up with ideas and stuff, and they'll have a process in place whereby people can submit ideas or teams can submit ideas. Other companies will have an annual week. They'll have a week, their annual innovation week, whereby teams and groups of people and individuals are given time and space in that week to come up with ideas, and then they submit those ideas, and then those ideas are evaluated, and again, people are rewarded for those that are carried through and put into practice. Other companies will have a hall of fame. I worked for Microsoft. Microsoft used to patent a lot of ideas, and what they did was they took the names of the people who came across, and their names were put on the patent. So whilst the company owned the patent, the individuals were named, and they had in one of their buildings, I don't know if they still have it, but they had in one of their buildings at head office a wall of fame. So all of the names of all of the people who brought forward ideas that went through and got patented were forever and a day up on the wall of fame. And the key thing is visibility. Innovation won't sustain if it's something that's done in a back room. What we have to do is we have to shine a light on the outcomes of the innovation and have those, have those innovative ideas that are brought to fruition. They have to be publicly recognized. And maybe that means, entering the idea into a public competition that many industry associations and organizations will have on an annual basis. And then to help sustain, we want somebody at a senior level for that innovation. So he or she recognizes that, well, actually, it's my responsibility to ensure our innovative processes sustain over time, and he or she will be held accountable for making sure that they can demonstrate and highlight and publicize how the ideas were brought from an idea phase into a new way of working or a new outcome that the organization is getting benefit from. Appoint somebody at a senior level to be accountable for championing the cause of innovation, and put rewards in place, put recognition forums in place, and have your wall of fame that gives people permanent recognition for their contribution to ideas for the success of the organization.
And I love the idea of the wall of fame, because it actually unlocks discussion around community and just around, we all have a part to play here. So it could have been, anybody could, from the secretary up to, different team members, have a really important part to play here. And I know that if somebody's listening in, particularly a HR professional who's thinking, this week, I want to do something positive to shift the culture towards an innovative culture, what one behavior can they do this week that could, start to change unfolding?
First of all, I would make it a priority. Everybody in the modern world talks to me about being busy. And I think busy is one of the most useless words on the planet. We're never, ever going to have more than 24 hours in the day. So in fact, we're never busy. What we've done is we've prioritized doing something else. So what we've got to do is we've got to make innovation a priority. And what we've got to do is we've got to find an opportunity to showcase innovative ideas. Now, that might be we've seen something internally where somebody brought a good idea to fruition, and what we do is we find an opportunity to showcase and recognize and reward that. Or frankly, we look externally and we see a competitor or another organization that have brought a really good idea to the forefront and turned it into something of value. And what we do is we bring that back into our organization and we say, hey, folks, we're getting left behind. So what the HR leader can do is he or she can, first of all, let's make this a priority. And it's a priority because if we are not innovating, by definition, we're probably falling behind, particularly with the pace of change in the modern world. If we're not keeping up, and we won't be keeping up if we're not being innovative and creative. So I would, first of all, I'd make it a priority. I would find an opportunity to showcase either something internally or something externally, because lots of times there's examples of excellent innovation and creativity that are out there. And if we bring that back into our organization and just say, hey, look, this is what our competition is doing, why are we not at that level? So we have to challenge ourselves. I would look at setting up the very least an annual event. It could be, if you wanted to go to a quarterly event, that's fine. Make it public, make it visible, make it a priority.
I love that. Make it public, make it visible, make it a priority. And we've only just scratched the surface and we've already reached our time. Paddy, if somebody's listening in and wants to contact you and maybe wants to have a deeper conversation with you and maybe invite you into their senior team leaders, how can they get in contact with you?
Always delighted to chat to folks. It's paddy@.ie is my email. The website is barperformancecoaching.com. And my phone number is 086-785-4644. So delighted to chat to anybody who would like to have a follow-up conversation.
Well, I'm hoping I'm going to have a very innovative week. Thank you so much, Paddy from Barr Performance Coaching. And thank you all for listening to HR HQ, the interview series.
HRheadquarters.ie